This is my Lamborghini Gallardo, which I've owned for around 2.5 years. It's been an awesome car and I've had no dramas with it. I got a recent checkup at Lamborghini and they told me that my clutch is past the wear marks and it needs replacing. So instead of getting Lamborghini to do it, I thought, how hard can it be? Maybe I could do it myself. Well, let's find out how hard it is to change a clutch on a Lamborghini Gallardo E-Gear.
The first thing you need to do is jack up the rear of the vehicle and put the safety stands under the correct locations on your Lamborghini. It's then time to remove the rear wheels. And as a tip, make sure you crack those bolts when the wheels are on the ground. It's now time to get in and remove the wheel arches. Don't forget the few bolts that are down at the rear, and that will allow your wheel arch to pop straight out. It's then time to disconnect the battery, but to do that, you do have to remove the front luggage compartment. There's 4 bolts, and they should normally be easy to get to, but mine had the factory CD player, and it was a little bit more tricky. And then you remove the wiring, and that will allow you to take the full front luggage compartment right out. That will then allow you to disconnect the negative on the battery. It's now time to go to the back of the car and remove the grills just by undoing the few bolts that are holding it together. Then it's time to remove the rear bumper. Just undo the few bolts that are around the back, and there's a couple on either side on the inside. Then you can remove the rear bumper and move it out of the way. It's time to go into the engine bay now and undo the clamps for the airbox. There's a few bolts holding that on. Underneath the airbox though, there is one plug that is a little bit hard to get to. So reach down and undo that. Then you can take the airbox right out of the engine bay. Now it's time to undo and remove the rear trim and tail lights. A few nuts and bolts holds that all together, and that's quite simple to remove all of those. From there, we're going to remove the rear subframe and support panels. You start with the top one, and that one has the boot release cord, and that is a little bit tricky to disconnect, but once you've got that, then you can move on to the main subframe. 8 bolts holds that on, and then you can take that out of the way and then remove the heat shield. And there you have the muffler for the big V10. 4 bolts holds the muffler on, and 2 other bolts holds the muffler to the exhaust. Undo those, and then you can remove it right out of the way. Remove the catalytic converters, and that will then allow you to be able to remove the oil catch can.
I'm getting caught up on a few things. Catalytic converters, the bolts were rusty on the exhaust, and that happens on all cars, and that was quite a bit of difficulty getting those out. The reason is because the bolts are way back down in here. So with a normal car, you can get to it under the car. But with the Lamborghini, it is a lot more tricky. Got the catalytic converters out, which allowed me to get the catch can out. So now I've got plenty of room. Now, I guess the next part is going to be removing the rear drive shafts, and then the hardest part, and it's the part I'm not looking for, but it could be really easy, and that's removing the whole e-gear assembly, then unbolting the gearbox and removing it out.
Next, we remove the drive shaft covers. Only 3 bolts holds that on. Then it's time to undo the bolts for the drive shaft. A bit of a tip, put your handbrake on. It stops it spinning around and makes it a lot easier. Then it's time to undo the 8 bolts for the E-gear and the 2 hoses that connect to the rear of the gearbox.
Okay, one of the things that I was really scared about was removing the E-gear assembly here. It actually turned out to be one of the easiest things. It was only like 8 little bolts and it popped off, and it's now just tucked off to the side here. So that's a good thing. Removing the drive shafts on either side down here, again, something that was really simple to do. Only a few bolts holding those on, and those drive shafts just basically pop straight off, which is fantastic. I've been able to disconnect all the major lines that connect all to the back of the gearbox, and that's really simple. There was only 2 of those, and they were just screw connectors. And what was really cool is, Lambo, you've done this right. There was one special hose that I really didn't want to disconnect down the bottom. It looked really tricky, and I followed it all the way back to here, and it's got a quick release connector, like a hydraulic quick release connector. I released that, and that will allow me to keep that hose on underneath and be able to pull the gearbox out. And right now we're up to just undoing the final few bell housing bolts. Then we're gonna support it, and I think it's about time to move the gearbox out. Also, I just undid the major mounts that are just here, and the gearbox is basically sitting there. I can almost pick it up and move it.
I carefully attached a chain to the existing bolt points on the gearbox. Carefully and gently, I applied a little bit of pressure, and the gearbox moved up and out very easily. Once clear of the motor, I then moved it right out of the way.
Well guys, to say I'm excited is an understatement, because I finally got the gearbox out of my Lamborghini Gallardo. Holy heck, what a job, folks. Very time consuming, but I did it and got it out, so I can now get to the clutch, and I can do the new clutch as well. There's the gearbox. I'm going to do the throwout bearing and stuff like that. Check this out, guys. Coming through, we've got our Lamborghini box. This is what our clutch comes in, and it should come in a really cool box because it's bloody expensive. All right, so that's it for today. I'm going to focus on doing this clutch tomorrow, and then once we get all that done, clutch, throwout bearing, and all the little bits and pieces, I can then focus on putting it back together.
The new clutch in the box that it comes in. There's the beauty. This is the old clutch compared to the new OEM clutch. You can see the clutch material on the new one goes all the way around, but the one on the old clutch, it doesn't. So it shows that the old clutch must have been refurbished at one stage.
I've just removed the old throwout bearing from the gearbox, and that's it there. Boy, it is yuck. But the replacement looks totally different. That's it there, and that's what I'm supposed to put in.
And now the flywheel is on, and you can see the little pen marks where I wrote down the sequence of tensioning up the flywheel. Then it's time to put in the clutch locator tool, and then put on the clutch. But make sure you do line the clutch up with the flywheel with the numbers that are on each side. You'll notice some drill marks there. That is because Lamborghini balances their clutches, and the drill marks are to make it perfect. Then it's time to put in the new washers in the gearbox. And then you can apply the throwout bearing. Tension that up. And now it's time to put it all back together and reverse the whole process. Everything goes together rather quickly at this stage. Your catalytic converters and your catch can goes in, your E-gear goes straight back on. Remember, it's only 8 bolts. All your cables and all your wiring goes straight back on, and it comes together rather quickly. Before I knew it, I had it back on its wheels and I moved it outside so I could clean off any of the oil and muck from the whole removal of the gearbox and get it all ready to put the bumper back on.
Well guys, as you can see, the Lamborghini has been put back together. What an awesome job it has been, stripping this thing back down to nothing but the engine and then putting it all back together again. Okay, is it advisable to do the clutch yourself? Well, yes and no. Firstly, it's not that hard. It is just time consuming. Secondly, you will need somebody with a computer to be able to do two things. First is reset your clutch, and the second is to be able to flush the E-gear system so you can get all the bubbles out of the E-gear system there. If you've got a manual, well, I suppose you don't have to worry about that, but you do need somebody or access to that computer to do that, and that's what I had, so luckily that certainly helped me. But apart from that, everything was pretty much straightforward and fairly simple to do, although a bit daunting because it is a Lamborghini. But guys, I've done 100 Ks in it now. I've done the clutch wear-in procedure. Everything is absolutely perfect and it drives just like brand new. So I hope you enjoyed watching my little bit of mechanical work on how to do a clutch in a Lamborghini Gallardo.